Continuing with our happy and uplifting Bible verses, today we're reading from Judges. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Judges, but it is one of the less happy and uplifting books in the Bible, and one that can be a little bit of a challenge. So I encourage you to listen to the word and also to understand that context is coming, I promise. From Judges chapter 4, verses 12 through 24. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Harosheth Hagoyim, the Kishon River, all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down to Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword, and Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was an alliance between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. "I'm thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. "Stand in the doorway of the tent," he told her. "If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone there?' say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the tent peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come," she said, "I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera, with a tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites. And the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. That was a pretty horrible story, wasn't it? The Israelites, as was so often the case, are fighting with the locals. It was a border war, and the enemy was in a really good position to defeat the Israelites. Deborah, who at that time was the leader of the Israelites, had a word of the Lord that the enemy leader, Sisera, was going to be delivered into the hands of the Israelites, and the Israelites would be victorious. Deborah sent the soldiers off, and the Lord went ahead of them to achieve victory. And Sisera's army was defeated. Not a man left standing, Scripture says, except Sisera, who ran off. And he got to the tent of this woman, Jael, the wife of his ally, and asked for something to drink and rest, and that she would hide him and lie if anyone came along and asked if she had a visitor in her tent. And at first, Jael treated him hospitably, welcoming him into the tent, giving him some milk to drink, covering him with a blanket. And then, while he napped, she drove a tent peg through his temple and killed him. It's gruesome. It's awful. We don't like that. Why would that story be in the Bible? What lasting lesson could it have to teach us today in a world that seems torn apart too often, and that we keep hoping and trying to make more civilized, not less so? What can we take away from this violent, awful story of war and trickery and graphic murder? Because there must be a lesson for us here. Something we can learn. For it says in 2 Timothy that all of Scripture is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So something has to be in this awful story. Well, the lessons that we are to learn from Scripture are not always obvious. In the case of this story, it makes a little more sense if we look at it through the New Testament lens of Mark's Gospel Carol read this morning. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell, and so on. Mark's gospel highlights for us that we need to literally remove that which leads us astray, that which causes us to stumble. In a graphic and horrible way, the story of Jael with her tent peg parallels the story of cutting off one's own hand to remove a stumbling block. Neither is something we particularly want to mimic, but both are vivid descriptions of how it is vital that we make sure we are following God's lead rather than leading others astray. So in our story, we see that Sisera, this Canaanite leader, had been leading an army against the Israelites. And we see God's chosen people defeat the whole army except for Sisera. You would think that letting one guy go wouldn't be that big a deal. But you have to remember, this one man was a strong leader and a fierce warrior. Had Sisera escaped, there was every likelihood that he would go back, raise up a new army, and come after the Israelites with renewed vigor and a sense of righteous anger to seek revenge for his fallen comrades. This would likely not have been good for the Israelites, for there are few greater threats than a good leader who is also a great soldier and who has a loyal army of followers seeking revenge in righteous anger. Anyone who has seen the movie Gladiator will recall that Russell Crowe's character was just such a man, and his men were loyal to the point of openly defying the emperor. It's dangerous to make such a strong leader angry. Knowing Sisera posed a significant threat to his people, God needed to remove that stumbling block. As Sisera ran for his life and came upon the tent of Heber, a man whose family had an alliance with Sisera's king, Heber's wife Jael invited him in. And according to Matthew Henry, it is probable that Jael really intended kindness to Sisera. But by a divine impulse, she was afterwards led to consider him as the determined enemy of the Lord and of his people, and to destroy him. All our connections with God's enemies must be broken off if we would have the Lord for our God and his people for our people. He that had thought to have destroyed Israel with his many iron chariots is himself destroyed with one iron nail. Thus the weak things of the world confound the mighty. The Israelites would have prevented much mischief if they had sooner destroyed the Canaanites as God commanded and enabled them. But better be wise late and by wisdom, by experience, than never be wise. Matthew Henry puts things rather eloquently, doesn't he? So Jael kills Sisera with a tent stake. Why a tent stake? That's an odd weapon, isn't it? But it was what she had, and it was something that would not have raised suspicions among neighboring tents. Women typically set up the tents in this time and place, hammering the tent pegs into the ground. So Jael would have had non-suspicious access to tools. And the sound of a woman hammering a tent peg would not have brought people running because it was a normal occurrence. And it was effective. Whatever came over her, whatever possessed her to do this thing, Jael was a murderess. Not only according to our modern legal definitions, but according to the rules of her own ancient society. Yet, what she did was necessary in the ways of the Lord, for it removed a great stumbling block, changing history forever. And as one of my favorite quotes says, well-behaved women rarely make history. Well, right after Jael kills Sisera, Barak, the leader of the Israelite military force, shows up at her tent. And she shows him Sisera, the man he sought. And he was dead. Scripture then tells us on that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites. And the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. See, God's plan, that he had told them over and over and over, was for the Israelites to inhabit Canaan. Sisera was serving the king of Canaan against the Israelites, and he was apparently a pretty good soldier. He was part of what was leading God's people astray. He was the offending eye, the stumbling foot. He had to be removed for the good of God's kingdom, for the future of God's plan that the Israelites would inhabit Canaan. We don't have to know why that was God's plan. We know that it was God's plan. So anything that stood in the way of the fulfillment of God's plan needed to be removed, no matter how painful or violent or utterly disgusting and disturbing the story might be. It was a different time and a different place, and we would probably wish Sisera had been locked up and rehabilitated, but the goal remained God's providential care of God's people. In modern times, we are no longer called upon to commit cold-blooded murder in the name of the Lord, thankfully. So we are not likely to have another Jael in our history. We are no longer told by God to conquer foreign lands in the name of the Lord at the end of a sword. But in the time and place that the story takes place, that was how things worked. Today, we are called to draw people to God, not by war or separation from the rest of society or refusal to interact with those who are different from us, but through love and care, especially care of the most at risk, the least, the lost, and the left behind. We are not to conquer lands with violence, but to conquer souls with kindness. That is why we do mission, and why one of the great ends of the church is the promotion of social righteousness. Yet we are still to remove those things that lead others astray. Poor alliances, sins that separate us from God, habits that might lead others astray, the temptations that lead us to stumble into bad habits. Whatever it is that offends, whatever it is that causes us to stumble, it needs to go. While we like to believe that all things are acceptable in moderation, if something causes us to stumble, then we at least need to avoid it completely, to cut it out of our lives, even as Mark's gospel suggests, even if it's something that somebody else can do without stumbling. However painful it might be, however unbelievable it might seem, we are better off entering the new life in the kingdom without whatever it is that we find ourselves tempted to, than we would be sweating out eternity because we kept giving in to temptation. So think about what the temptations are in your life that cause you to stumble. What are those hidden sins that need to be snuffed out, even as Sisera was while he was hidden in Jael's tent? What things do you do that might be leading someone else astray? What are you doing that prevents you from fulfilling God's plan for your life? The questions aren't easy and they aren't comfortable, and we may find we don't like the answers any more than we like the story of Jael and her tent peg. But we still need to ask the questions of ourselves. We are called to examine our own lives for those sins, even the hidden ones, and do our best to remove them. If what we are doing seems harmless to us, but we become aware that it's leading someone else into bad behaviors, we need to stop. It really is that simple. It's never easy, but it really is that simple.